Hey everyone, I know it's been a while. I want to welcome you to the Math for the Impatient series. I'm here with Sam Kladko, our co-founder and CTO of SKALE Network. So let's talk about where SKALE sits in the blockchain industry. And I think more importantly, one of the key indicators of that is what are the metrics that you use to measure growth? And in particular, I think it would be really interesting to talk about transactions, right? Because we hear a lot about transactions and understanding what that is the metric. So why is that particular metric important for SKALE?
Yeah, Marcus, first of all, I would like to say that I'm happy to see you again on Zoom. There was a bit of a pause, I would say, and I will just explain in a second to our viewers that we had this offsite for 2 days. We were discussing many interesting things about SKALE, and actually I really wanted to post the pictures of this offsite because it was pretty much like, I would say, like in the forest, in the countryside. But then, all blockchain people don't really like to post things where they are. So now I'm back in Lisbon. I think I may be able to post the pictures now.
All right. Cool. Yeah, it was a great offsite. We did a lot of great things, and we got to talk about about the future of SKALE, marketing, sales, engineering, all kind of talking about things.
And
So
we even played.
Tell me a little bit more about transactions.
Yeah. So basically, I think during the offsite we discussed a lot. What's the future of SKALE? And SKALE is a startup, and startups usually have phases. If you read books like Lean Startup, the other books about how startup functions in Silicon Valley in particular, you build a product, then you basically try to get the product used by people, and then you gather information, and from the information you gather, you analyze, and you're trying to understand where do you need to focus? Why do people use your product? And startups have been really successful. The entire story of entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley is based on startups, and typically 4 out of 5 startups fail because no one wants to use the product. I think we did get through this barrier.
We have product market fit.
Yeah, we do have it, and many people want to use SKALE. And if I judge by the number of feature requests to the engineering team, sometimes I think even too many people want to use SKALE. But we do actually have this. We're pretty excited, reasonably excited about the future, because we do have really interesting people using us. And but now, the question becomes, where do we need to focus? Because the blockchain space is huge, the industry is huge. What's the place that SKALE needs to take in this huge blockchain world? And I think what we see just experimentally, just from people using SKALE, that the sweet spot, the most effective place for SKALE is where people have heavy lots and lots of transactions. And in fact, in this spot, in this particular market segment, we're already #1, because no one else provides transactions which are free to users. We have 0 transaction fees, and which are Ethereum compatible, and also heavy in a sense that SKALE is able to take lots of transactions, which also actually does create some technology challenges, because you can crash, obviously, but our technology is pretty strong, and every time we have a bug, we fix it, we improve the technology. So we do see, just experimentally, even without thinking, that people want to use SKALE as a blockchain network where lots of transactions happen. Some of them may have lots of value, some of them no value, some of them low value, but high volume transactions, and Ethereum compatible, definitely, because the industry is becoming really about solidity and MetaMask and all of the things in the Ethereum ecosystem, especially during the crypto winter, where people really want to use tried and true things. So we see this experimentally, that people want SKALE to be a network which processes lots and lots of transactions at 0 fees. That's number one. Number two, if you there's another argument, and this argument goes like this: if you look at how technology propagates, right? Technology is always about waves. You have things like Wi-Fi, you have social networks, you have now blockchain, you have AI, right? You have e-commerce, and typically technology goes into cycles where you have something growing, like Wi-Fi, and then at some point the growth stops, and people start thinking, and they actually start thinking about something else. There's a great book of George Soros, American economist and financial guy, which explains the cycles. And basically, during good times, the really interesting thing is that during good times, people don't like to change their ideas. Like if social networks provide growth, people won't think about other things because social networks are already cool. But once social networks stop growing and there's a kind of social networks winter, people start thinking about AI. And now we are in this period where there were these ideas from the previous cycle, basically DeFi, and also NFTs, like highly priced NFTs, right? Which essentially were the ideas from the previous good times. Now we have the crypto winter, but we need to find something new, because it almost never happens in technology that the old hype or the old momentum, the old technology again gets reborn. So DeFi was great. People were trading huge amounts of money, also these hugely valued NFTs and things. But it's pretty much done. And the problem about the previous wave of growth is it was very much like echo chamber. We discussed this with you, Marcus. It was like, this is really interesting thing. I looked like at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, believe it or not, was pretty much invented at the same time, like as iPhone, like a smartphone. Okay, now what I can tell you, till this point, there have been 10 billion smartphones produced in the world, 10 billion smartphones. And if you look how many people use Bitcoin network, maybe 1 million at best, less than 1 million probably. So the same time frame. So the crypto, and then now the smartphone, there are billions and billions of smartphones, and now the next generation, on this billions of smartphones, there are millions and billions of people using things like WhatsApp or Uber, or you name it. So it's not only first generation thing happens, but there have been 2 generations of technology since Bitcoin was invented, and Bitcoin still has like 1 million users, which is not much. And so it has really been this echo chamber, because crypto is essentially money. There's been this echo chamber where people were doing things like centralized finance, or things like very highly priced like NFTs. And the industry looks big. If you look at something which is called like total value locked, basically the sum of everything, right? Of this essentially imaginary value, because people don't sell, so it's paper value. But if you look at this TVL, the industry is huge. If you look at people using the thing, in many cases, you're not even talking about millions of people. You're talking about thousands of people using this highly valued DeFi applications. That's kind of the previous thing. Now we have the crypto winter, and now we need to, if you want to have the crypto summer again, we need to come up with something new, with a new direction for the technology, because it always happens. The new summer starts with new things. And that's another argument. The third argument is that there is a huge change in the economy of the world, because there was lots of money in the economy of the world, and then COVID happened, and then there's now a war, right? And now in places like Europe, there are huge energy costs, and people don't have money. And in the US, we know that the banks are raising interest rates, and people don't have money. So we're entering the period where after many years of pretty healthy growth, the world economy is going to have a couple of years of pretty challenging time, and almost for sure people won't have much money. So if you're going to measure things in TVL, there's almost impossible to imagine a situation where there will be a TVL growth in the world for the next couple of years. We're just in a very, very different situation.
Yeah.
So we need to come up with something else, which means that the new thing can't have huge TVL. It's impossible, but it can have lots of transactions, right? You know, people that don't have money can use blockchain. They can use it for things which are not really costly. You know, they can get together in communities. They can do good things for the world. There are many, many, many applications of blockchain that people know these ideas, but they haven't been implemented because these other things were like high value trading essentially was the thing for the previous crypto summer. And the next thing, from all perspectives, from what we see in the market, from how people use scale, from macroeconomic conditions, just from the generic technology history, you know, arguments, we think that the next wave will be about people using blockchain. And, you know, some of the transactions may have lots of value, some not. What's going to be important are these transactions going to be useful. So the measurement is going to be many transactions useful, but not necessarily high value transactions. So that's actually, this all kind of set of arguments brings us pretty much to the same point, that for us at Scale, this segment of the market is really important, especially having that we're already the leader. We have the technology. And so we decided for the next, you know, for the medium time frame, for the next probably year, you know, 6 months, to really focus on our product and scaling our product in terms of how people use it, in terms of how many transactions in particular people run on our product, because it's a very simple metric. You can explain this metric. And it's also a pretty reasonable metric. So we decided that this metric and not TVL is going to be something that is going to determine scale evolution for, say, for the next 12 months, but also for much longer time frame.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's multiple arguments in there that make sense, because ultimately, as much as the unrecognized capital gains that exist represent lots of potential, as we know with mobile didn't really take off until people really started seeing monthly active users and daily active user counts go into sort of these massive hockey stick kind of upgrowth kinds of curves. And that's about transactions and utility. It's about, you know, do I have an application, or in our case, a dApp that is useful and is going to, you know, be something that I want to open up on a regular basis, or a game that I want to play on a regular basis. And so utility equals this kind of function of, or I should say utility drives this function of monthly active user, daily active user, and then thus transaction counts, because the more people are using it, the more transactions are going to occur. And so that's a more realistic actual measure of the success of a project. It's funny, you know, you had pointed out, I think earlier, that you know, Filecoin was so excited that they had 20,000 active users. And if you go to scale.space/stats, you'll see that just in September, we had over 28,000 users. And so, you know, these are these kind of metrics that are like, that's actually an important metric to look at. So I'll kind of bring this all back around. I think the next question is, you know, not just how can Scale grow faster, but, you know, what are you in engineering doing to help push that growth?
We after this kind of 2 days of discussions, we kind of all focused, and I think we converged. We had like a human consensus on this idea that we need to focus on this market segment that you're describing, Marcus. So we have like across the project, not only engineering, but marketing and business development, whatever. We have a pretty good understanding now that where we want to go, and people are pretty excited, I think. Now, as engineering, there are many things in which we are trying to help. And some of the things are really trivial. I mean, obviously, with many transactions, the network becomes really loaded, and things may happen. Maybe bugs, it may crash. You know, you never can say that nothing will happen, right? So we're taking some measures just to be ready for the growth. Basically, just doing some mundane things, our internal procedures, helping our validators, making really things which are really important day-to-day things. Just concentrating on every day. I think that's a bit boring, but that can be really, really important. So we are doing these things like operations, basically, running operations. For instance, how do we update the network if we have a new feature? If like you have a plane and you're changing something in the engine, but the engine keeps running. So this kind of things. Yeah, and this is really interesting, and I think we're learning, going really deep. I mean, I told some of our guys that because we're running like 25 chains now. A year from now, we'll have 25 chain years. So we're actually getting much more QA for consensus, for our blockchain, and for a system, because we just have in parallel running many things. So which is good, I think, because the more bugs we fix, it's like wine. With this age, it does improve. So that's good. So that's like mundane things. But then, in addition to that, we really, for the next 3 to 6 months, are going to help customers in a sense that we have many feature requests. That's where you can be really optimistic about Scale if you see how many things people ask us to add. So we have many requests, but we actually make priority for those requests that can actually help more people and can be implemented faster. And we made a decision to kind of move to a model of like small releases, releasing things fast and in small increments, just to be more agile. Because what we realized is that if we plan like a release for 3 months, even like 3 months, we get to the situation where people ask us to do something like next month. So we just have many requests, and this very dynamic industry. People just want things now. They can't wait 3 months. It's too long for them. So we actually moving to this model of like small, like really lean releases where we can add something quickly, iterate, QA, release, iterate, QA, release. We are moving to this agile release schedule to be able to dynamically help customers. And one of those releases is coming soon. We have one feature people are asking about, which is everything which is related to like searching the blockchain, like logs, events, getting information from it. That's number one. And people just want it now. They can't wait 3 months. And another feature, archive node, people just want to have more archive nodes, just to have more copies of their blockchain. So, but there are many more. Like it's just there's a list of priorities, and we're filtering higher priorities over higher priorities, basically. So that's also what we are doing. And so that's and then we another kind of an interesting thing. We understand that because it's crypto winter, we kind of the old ideas are gone, and the new ideas will come. So we are shooting for like very early stage startups, because these are the guys that have new ideas, not just locked into like having like zillions of TVL and getting used by thousands of people. We do see this kind of a not generation change, but a different wave of engineers coming to the crypto space with different ideas, more about like changing the world, or making sure that the guy you see in a subway actually uses blockchain, basically. And we see more of this in the early stage. So we're concentrating on those people that can give us many users potentially, and many transactions. So we're also doing this, and that's, I think we will keep on doing this. The last thing that we also going to be doing, we're going to be providing more connection between our engineers and people, essentially, because sometimes engineers, develop things and they're not really connected to people that actually want to use those things. So we kind of instituting a bit of a program where people from our San Francisco office, from our Lisbon office, if we have a Zoom call, or we have something where people need something, just to put an engineer, to add an engineer to the call, just for the engineer to be able to understand, kind of to get the vibe, to understand the feelings when people actually using the product now. Right. Because that's the thing. So that's pretty much, I think, we are kind of trying to concentrate on more like a near and medium term things, because we do see very simple fact that people want to use the product. So the next 3 to 6 months are going to be hugely important for us, because if we can prove ourselves further for the 3 to 6 months, it's going to become easier. In fact, the next 6 months are going to be probably harder than the next 6 months. This is really where the thing is going to get decided. So we're kind of cutting the number of meetings, trying to get more effective, because this next 6 months are going to be hugely important for Scale.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, last question. I mean, ultimately, we have this vision of what's going on, and so the question is, what do you view as this ultimate goal for Scale, and how do you think that this environment of gas-free, cost-free transactions can help change, the way that everyone uses Web3?
It's let's imagine the world where you go to a subway, whatever, and you go to like Uber sharing ride, and the guy or the girl that sits nearby actually uses blockchain. Actually, it does use blockchain. How would this world work, and what would actually happen? I think there are many disruptive ideas in blockchain which never got implemented. People were thinking about like creating communities or doing better things to the world, like just very simple things like separating your trash or whatever, just cleaning up stuff or whatever, the environment. And so people have been talking about these things for years now, about the use of blockchain, but these things have never been implemented because these transactions are low value, and how you can compete with transactions that trade, the 5,000 people that trade the paper gains on DeFi. But now suddenly, I think if everyone on their smartphone has blockchain, and this blockchain is free, all of these ideas that people have been talking about that didn't realize for many years actually are going to be realized. So you're going to see, I think, lots of super simple stuff. There's people making communities, people helping out other people crowdsourcing things. Like you can like get some money to a person in a different country at a reasonable rate, and the person will pay back to you. And so basically, it's all about human organization. People have been talking about all things like people discussing, like making sure there is a fair supply chain, that you buy stuff from someone and there's no one exploited or no bad things happen to people that produce these things. So it's basically all about solving the very basic problem of human coordination, creating this network where people can coordinate. But on this network, if you, I don't have an Apple now with me, I wanted to show the Apple, but the idea is that technologies become great when you forget about them, right? And usually when technology happens, everyone says, this is the most important thing the humankind ever created, right? Right? And another technology happened. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember these things, right? I remember people said this about Wi-Fi and social networks. And
I remember it too.
Right? And it's true. But, at some point, you say, okay, blockchain is great, but probably also railroads are great, right? And so it's a great thing. The blockchain will become truly great. When actually people forget about that you're using it. Very much, if you look at nature, I wanted to show the apple, just an apple. It's a very simple example. You look at an apple, right? You see the apple. Yeah. But the fact is, this apple is constructed out of zillions of cells. Each cell has this incredibly complex machines, like these molecular machines inside, and they all work. And you don't see the cells. But the point is, because Apple is a higher abstraction, and if you go to buy an apple pie, you forget about the apple as the fruit. It's an apple pie. So it's yet another level of abstraction. So the technology, anything becomes super great if you form another level of abstraction on top of it. Another example, really simple, when I was a boy, I was born and raised in the Soviet Union, and we used to go with my parents to the sea, but it was really expensive to call. In the Soviet Union, everything was expensive, but particularly just to call anyone was expensive. So I don't know if you, Marcus, ever used it, but I used it. It was a thing called telegraph. Basically, you would pay per letter. You would send something a message, and it was like 1 ruble.
Western Union. Western Union was famous for the telegraph.
Right, so you had that, right, in America.
Yeah.
Okay, we had it in the Soviet Union. So my mom would like send to my grandma a letter, basically like 10 letters saying, we are okay. You know, because she paid for every letter. And that's actually what we have now in blockchain, you know. But now we're talking on video, and you don't think about internet protocol, you don't think about all of these compression technologies, about all the scientists that build the chips, build the mathematics. It's all lower level abstraction, like the cells in the Apple, right? But that's when the technology became great. And I think that's something which will happen about blockchain. Once this happens, in blockchain is in your phone, most people won't care. What they will care about, that there will be these communities, there will be this trash separation, there will be this environment, whatever, the crowdsourcing, they will care about the applications. Whether it's blockchain, whether it's scale, people won't need to know about this, but this will be the base that will actually provide an origin for higher level abstractions. And I think that actually, with 0 transaction fees for users, it actually can't happen. Actually, if you think about this, the only way blockchain can become invisible is if transactions are free. Because how can you make things invisible if you pay for each and single of them, right? You can't do it. So that's kind of the vision, I think, that we can come to at scale. And that's why for us, this is the metric. You know, you can only have one metric. You know, other metrics are important, but for what we do, it's enough if we excel in this one single thing that we're already doing the best. Yeah. And that's where we're going to be focusing for the near future and also for long term.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, this is just to bring it full circle again. Ultimately, you know, we talked about this almost obsessive focus on TVL to the point where people forget about the consumer, and crypto is not going to become crypto and blockchain is not going to become blockchain until you have massive amounts, billions of people using it. And it's, you know, if you think about the analogy of there's NASDAQ, which is a very important company and has a lot of money trading back and forth on its exchanges. And then there's AWS. Which one do you think is the more valuable company, and which one do you think is really kind of contributing to society at large in a massive way? If you think of that, then you start to realize, well, TVL really isn't the most important thing. It's transactions, because transactions are about how do we focus on the consumer experience and how do we bring mass adoption. And I think once the industry starts to realize that usability, UX, you know, what we call DAO and MAU, monthly active user and daily active users, are the most important things to think about in terms of the longevity. Until we make that shift, we're still going to be stuck in this very kind of small world of crypto where we all sort of know each other and not reach this kind of AWS, Google Cloud sort of status. So yeah, super exciting. And thanks, Stan, again. And if you look below, you will see both our website, you'll see our Telegram, you'll see our Twitter. Please subscribe and look forward to chatting some more in the future. Thanks, Dan.
Bye, Marcus. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. Bye.